Hello, this is Will Faerber from Art to Ride, and today we're looking at a submission by Jana of her horse Lilah. We're going to first take a look she's been having feet problems with the horse. So we're taking a look over the horse's body and just see what we see, and she's been having some saddle fitting issues. So we're going to see what we can see here. The first off, what I'd like to say is I think this is a very nice type horse. I like a lot of what I see. I'm not seeing anything that's just striking me about how her feet look. They actually look like they're in pretty good shape compared to a lot of horses that I see. So I don't know why a good shoeing job by somebody who knows what they're doing should be able to put shoes on this horse without any problem. Not really seeing anything there. It makes me want to have some special things. Now, once again, this is coming across the horse's top line. This is quite nice. I mean, she's got a lot of flesh on her. This horse has a lot of body. There's a lot of things that I really like about this horse. Going down her legs here once again. Looks like there might be a little bump there on the side of the hock. I'm not sure. I didn't zero in on that. Maybe something to look at. Maybe a little puffiness down those lower ankles. But nothing that's just striking me as this looks terrible. And once again, her feet actually look like they're in pretty good shape compared to a lot of the horses that I often see. Her back looks good. She's one of those horses that is a little bit roach back. That is, she's a raise there, a little bit in her loin there. And that's actually a good thing. She looks really quite strong and a really good type. So I'm liking a lot of what I see about this horse. I mean, she's a little bit straight behind, not terribly. And once again, I'm not seeing anything that's worrying me about these feet particularly. There's a little bump on the inside of her right fetlock joint there. But doesn't look like anything too serious. Little wind puffs. But there's a lot to recommend this horse, so I think if you can get her going correctly, this looks like it ought to be a good candidate for you. I have, of course, watched this video through, and what I generally saw in the riding and the lunging is the horse is just hollow. And this is one of those horses that's kind of interesting because just standing there looking at this horse, she looks like she's, in good flesh. She's not, apparently sway back the way so many of them are. She doesn't have a big hole there behind the saddle. And she's got a good strong build. Now I do see those white hairs right there in the middle of the withers. That shows me I think that's white hair. If it is, it may have been dirt there, but if it is, that tells me that, somewhere along the way she had a saddle that wasn't fitting and could have been hurting her back. I do like a lot of what I see about this saddle. I don't see anything particularly wrong here. I really like how wide it is. See how you can put your whole hand in there. So that's one of the things that we look for. And the panels all look quite smooth. I'm not seeing any lumps or anything that would cause a problem there. So that all looks quite good, and this is the new one you're looking at, so we would hope it wouldn't have any bumps on it. I would like to see a view from the side of how the girth hooks to the saddle, because that's one thing we always like to look at, that the girth isn't pulling the saddle forward, that the saddle girth is able to go straight down underneath the horse from where it hangs off of the saddle. So just something to think about that I wasn't really able to see there. In other words, when you look at the horse, the girth should always be perpendicular to the ground. It shouldn't look like it's at an angle. If it is, it's going to pull the saddle up on the horse's withers more. I like how this saddle is pretty short in the back. I like how it slopes up behind and away from that weak part of the horse's back. So that's one of the things that we look for, because we don't want to see pressure. Some people started building saddles. There's these ridiculous gussets coming way out the back that put all the pressure on the wrong part of the horse's back. And once again, you can see that she has a little bit of a roach back there. And horses like this can be surprising because they can be quite in their forehand, even though they look quite flesh, and the back looks like it's in pretty good shape there, which it is, I'm sure. But they can still be on their forehand and not be really working through their back yet, which is what I saw with this horse, even though she's in pretty good flesh here. On the lunge line, as I said, I like a lot about this horse. I think if you get it working, like right now, basically what the horse is doing, and which is what I saw throughout this video, is she's basically just pulling herself along with her shoulders. You can see how the head is up and that lower part of the neck is kind of U-neck. And you can see how far the horse is out behind its body when it's trot, that is with its hind legs. So you see that the pressure is still on the hind legs when the leg is way behind the body, that is behind the tail even. So that tells me she's not reaching up underneath herself the way we would like her to do. But boy, this is a nicely put together horse with a lot of potential. So I think this horse is certainly worth you spending the time on. And once again, I'm not seeing anything major here. Now, once again, same thing. See how I call this a Pepe Le Pew canter, because it's kind of like that character Pepe Le Pew in the cartoons who kind of bounced along. And that's not what we want. But look what a nice mover this horse is capable of being, even though she's rather hollow there and throwing her legs out. Now, once again, see how when she trots, how far the leg is behind the body when it's still on the ground. And you can see how high her head up. But this horse is built quite uphill, so even though she looks pretty uphill, you just remember saddlebred with stacked up shoes looks uphill, but it's on the forehand. So kind of same thing here. She is built quite uphill, and I think this horse has a lot of potential. I'm seeing a lot of things that I really like about this horse. And just going free, I'm not seeing anything that worries me particularly. I think if you get this horse going correctly over its back, and I'm not seeing anything that would prevent that from happening. So same, as I said, when you see that lunging bit, basically what she was basically doing is running, pull it with her head way up in the air, and you can see how she's pulling herself with her shoulders instead of her back end has very little to do with pushing her forward, and there's not really any thrust there. She's a big moving horse, and she's certainly capable of developing it from what I saw. So I see a horse I'd really like to see develop. Now, once again, that's what I want to see on this walk work. She needs to just stretch that neck out. Once again, she's the kind of horse that's quite, she's quite a nicely put together horse. And with a little work, she's going to turn into something really fantastic. If anything, her neck is slightly short, if anything, I was going to say. But I think that's more from the way she's been ridden. I think when you get her stretching out, her neck is going to be good. But it looks like it's turtled back into her body. And while her walk is pretty good in the sense that it's still a 4-beat walk, it's not lateral or anything. It always a little bit there, a couple of steps I saw. Once you get her stretching out to the neck, it's going to become much longer and much more swinging and active. So continue to work for the stretch until we get that all the way there. And once again, the saddle seems to fit pretty good. If this is the same saddle that you're in now, not a bad position. It seems to be, the girth seems to be pretty perpendicular to the ground there, as I see, so it's not pulling the horse's shoulder. So I think you got a pretty good saddle fit from what I can tell from the video there. And you can see how her walks. These are when her head came up, how the walk became lateral. That is, she started camel walking. That is, it looks like both legs on the same side are moving forward at the same time. So, and look how different it is when you let her neck out. Then she starts to swing, and the walk looks more evenly 4-beat. And that's basically what I saw with everything with this horse. I have little glimmers of what could be, just like on the lunge line, what could be a really nice horse. If you get this horse working over its back, I think you'll find that her foot problems and things, unless there's something that I can't see there. But I really didn't see anything in any of that would have worried me. And once again, this walk is okay, but we just need to get her neck out. And once again, see how you take contact, what that effect it does. And then she softens a little bit, but we still need to get her much, much longer. So keep trying. As soon as she softens, give and add a little bit of leg. So, and it seems to be that's what you're doing, basically. So, but you just need to get more of it. That is, you've got to get her neck out longer so she really starts to stretch to the ground. This horse might be a really good candidate to work in the shambone. Because she's just on the lunge line, she's not really using herself correctly, and the shambone might help her to get stretched out. If she won't, I'd try it with just the side reins first. I mean, I didn't see anything that the way you described it here that worried me, particularly on the lunge line. She just, looks like she doesn't really know how to lunge, but I didn't see her, being too, I've seen ones that would run around for an hour and a half, like completely out of their mind, so I didn't see that there. So this horse looks like a good candidate for all things, and I think it's worth spending the time with. And once again, see how when she brings her head down there, what she's really doing is just cranking her neck over, and you see how the walk becomes shorter. So we wanted to get her to do that to soften, but yet to lengthen the neck from the base of the shoulder. She needs to stretch that neck out. In other words, you need to grow another 2 foot of neck on this horse, which she will do by just getting her stretched out, and you'll see how the walk. You see how when she first kind of just tips over, she actually tips down onto the forehand like that, like a horse that's been kind of forced onto the bridle a little bit. So she's not really flexing in the pole. She's flexing a little further back in the neck. So once again, even when we're in a long stretch, it's that soft flexion of the pole we have to get before the horse is going to really connect the ring across the whole length of its top line. Whereas what this horse is doing is just kind of putting its head over, but it's actually not having the effect we want. That is, we want the neck to get now longer so the walk becomes more swinging. So most of what I see in terms of the horse's gaits, in terms of being lame or not, I just see a little bridle lameness. That is, the horse is not comfortable where she's moving at the moment, so she have these moments where she kind of throws her head against the bridle and she kind of hollows her back, for instance, even though it's not as apparent on a horse like this just because of her build. She has a really good, strong back, so that's what I look for. If you look at a horse that we have, Legolas, he's built very much in the same way, and these kind of horses, once you get them working over their backs, are very easy because they develop very, very quickly, unlike some of the ones that come to us that have a foot deep hole behind the saddle that has to be filled in before you can do much. This horse isn't that way when you get her stretching. Once again, same thing. You see how she throws her head up Now that turn that you made there was just very too sharp for this horse. So remember that you want all your movements to be able to be done in rhythm. So that turn that you made was so tight that all the horse could do was kind of fall out of the rhythm, and her head came up and braced against your hands. So remember, you want to always work within the scope of what the horse can do without altering its gaits in a bad way. That is, for the horse shortening up. So, and as soon as you feel that, you want to let the horse back out and stretch back out again. So what I'm seeing here is I think you're going to have a really nice horse here once you get it working correctly. And once again, she just needs, see, she comes over with her head, but she doesn't ever extend along the length of the top line, and that's what you're missing. So once again, getting back to the lunging issue, you know, I would start by trying to, I'd love to see you just lunge this horse in side reins. If you should go and watch my video on that, and if she won't stretch into the contact on her own in the side reins after a couple of days, it might be worth giving a try to the shambone on this horse, because it might really help her to get, you know, to learn, because she looks like she's just very tight in that neck and shoulder. She just really doesn't know how to get it out in front of her. And that's what we need to solve in order to solve your problems here. Same thing when you trot it off. You see how she just brought her head up, and now she's just pulling with her shoulders. You see what I'm talking about? So what you're doing there, you don't have her moving. What you need to do is move her out more rapidly. Let her get moving more actively, and then try to soften her. What's happening here is she's just pulling with her shoulder, and when you're trying to soften her, she's just bending her neck over, just like she was in the walk, but it isn't affecting her gait in a positive way. You see, it's still very short and very pulled down on the forehand. She's basically, you can see how she's stressing. If you watch how the knee action, what happens there, the knee isn't able to swing and the leg doesn't swing straight because she's pulling with the shoulder. The back legs right now have almost nothing to do with projecting this horse forward. They're just kind of being drug along for the ride back there. So what we want to do is change that around. The horse will only work through its top line. That is, it will work its hind legs correctly when we get it working to the top line. Then the horse will start to develop thrust. That is the push off the ground that only the hind legs can develop. Horses can do a lot off their shoulders. We see it every day. In the show ring, I see most of the horses I see jumping these days are jumping off their shoulders. They're not jumping off, they're primarily jumping off their shoulders and then secondarily jumping off of their hindquarters. Instead of jumping as one piece, so to speak, the horse is kind of jumping in two pieces. It thrusts from the shoulders and then thrusts from behind what it can. But that will never be perfect as long as the horse is not really working over its back. So I'm just kind of seeing more of the same thing here. You know, once again, what I see is what might be called lameness. Is just bridle lameness. This horse is just not working over its back. And, you know, when she softens, all she's doing is pulling her neck over. She's not engaging anymore. The back isn't becoming more swinging. The only thing that's happening is she's just bending her neck over. So she's not really extending into the contact with the bridle, which is what we have to get her doing. So once again, I'd start by just letting her be a little more active. Get her swinging and just get her a little more active to start. And of course, go back to the lunging work and see if you can't do that more correctly to help her, because I'm not seeing anything here that's other than that. You know, I'm seeing nothing but bridle lameness is the only thing I'm seeing here. And say a horse with a lot of potential. This is like one of those horses, there's a video on there somewhere that I talk about how your horse will surprise you. This horse will surprise you. When you get this horse working over its back, it's going to be a really nice horse. And once again, that will solve the problem. You know, what happens when the horse is pulling with its shoulders the way this one is doing, it also messes up their feet, because of course the feet aren't working in the way they're intended to work. So the horse is putting too much pressure against the front feet as it drags itself forward from the front end. So all that's going to get a lot better. Same thing here. You see how the neck, when it comes back up, she's just as ewe-necked as she was when you started, because all she's really doing is bending over more from the middle of the neck, which is not what we want, and not round, even though I know some people think it is. I had a student come to me and tell me their trainer told her to stand still and hold against the horse's mouth to the middle of the back, of the middle of the neck rather, popped up, and that's when a horse was round. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. Round means the entire length of the horse's top line. You want to think of it just like one long muscle. You know, we have to get it to engage evenly. You know, so a horse is try putting even your fingers around your biceps and try to flex your bicep and see what happens. Well, that's what happens to horses' backs, and then we're not allowed to move correctly. It just short circuits all that from happening. Then the horse drags itself along by its front end long enough, and either the hock goes out, the hocks go out, or the fetlock joints go out, or they develop all the myriad things that we're seeing so common today in all these horses that are not being worked correctly. So once again, same thing here, you know, we're just not getting enough stretch. So what we need to do is go back. I really suggest you go back and try to study that work on the lunge line and see if we can't get her stretching off without you up there, and I think you'll find it'll prove everything else. In the meantime, once again, my basic rule of thumb is if I can't get the horse to stretch in the walk, there's no point in going into the trot, because that's what you're doing here. You're in the trot, but all you're really doing is, occasionally pulling her head over from the middle of her neck, and there's nothing changing about the way she's moving. She's just continuing to move by pulling with her shoulders. And once again, you can see that clearly. I mean, look when she brings her head up, you can see how ewe-neck she is over there. Kind of like horses that have been draw reined, they look like their necks are over, but as soon as you take the draw reins off, unless they've been completely broken behind the bit, which is what happens in due time. And I suggest you all who are interested in draw reins, the person who introduced them to our country, just to point this out, Bert Denemethy, who was the great jumper rider from Hungary, he just always railed against how draw reins should never be put between the horse's legs and come up that way. They should only be work like side reins, where they come from the side of the horse, at the bottom of where the girth attaches there to the saddle. So just a historical note. But nowadays, everybody puts them between the horse's legs, and that's how they end up with their horses broken over in the necks. So once again, same thing here, this trotting work, and the same thing when we get to the canter. It's that same sort of Pepe Le Pew canter. You see how ewe-neck she is there, and she's just she's throwing herself up in the air off of her shoulders instead of engaging and rounding and smoothing that out. So what we want to do is get her working over the back there, though she almost works a little better in the canter than she does in the trot, quite honestly. But it's the same kind of thing. It's just not really there. It's a good-looking horse with a great body, but once again, look how when she starts moving, how ewe-neck she is there. See how thick the bottom of the neck is in that canter. So once again, all of this work is really just has no real value. And if you keep doing work like this with the horse hollow, eventually it will make the horse lame, as it does all of them. This is why we see so many people getting their horses injected at very young ages these days, which is ridiculous. So we need to go back to the lunging work with this horse, and then we need to go back to the walk work and really get her stretching out before you bother to trot or canter, because once again, you can see this canter isn't going to do you any good. So to canter, to do like this, if anything, is just, if you do too much of it, it'll make the horse's back very sore and make its feet very sore, because when a horse is, as you increase speed, you increase the pressure on the horse's feet. So, if you're cantering a horse, it's probably puts, I don't know what exactly the percentage is, but it's probably, 30% more pressure against the horse's legs, in a bad way than if the horse were working over its back. So, or than if it were in the trot. They say at a full gallop, a horse is something like 5,000 pounds per square inch of pressure on the horse's feet at a full gallop. So you can see how important it is that the horse have that shock absorber system of his back working, so that it can take all that pressure of movement. See, once again, you see how ewe-necked. All that's really happening here is she's just pulling her head over. And we'll see the canter will be in this direction, the same as the other one, just hollow. But once again, this is the kind of horse that can fool you, because just standing there, she looks pretty good. But you see how ewe-neck she is when she goes into the canter. You can see her just sort of bounding. Look at that. She's kind of bounding off of her shoulders in front, instead of, the canter should plane out, so to speak, and become even and just stay. It should not be like a rocking horse, where the horse is rocking from front to back. That's not a correct canter. It should stabilize. I heard another so-called dressage trainer actually had somebody on a rocking horse showing them how this is how it's supposed to be, and nothing could be further from the truth. So once again, very ewe-necked here in the canter. But she's not going to stay ewe-necked. I want to just encourage you with this horse, because what I'm seeing here is a horse that I really like a lot, that has a lot of potential. You see the one that just went by there, quite ewe-necked and quite upside down. Same kind of thing. They're not moving through their backs. So we need to go back to the beginning with the lunge work and then the walk work and really get her soft and stretching. We need to get that neck out another foot longer in the walk before you even begin to think about trotting her again. That is under saddle. Now that's looking a little better there coming to the end, but you see how as soon as you start to do something, she just throws that head back and goes back into that hollow position. But once again, she could fool you because this horse is built very uphill. But yet, even though she's built uphill, look how high her hips look in the canter. When she begins to round out and becomes lower, those hips will look lower than that.